David, you've led some transformational changes in revenue management. So as a result of this, what skills are required in revenue management today?
So for me, kind of the key skill is the ability to communicate. And that's to communicate in a strategic way, in a long-ranging way, and to be able to communicate both upwards and downwards and sideways. So the power of influence can't be underestimated in the role of a revenue management team or leader, and their ability to influence not just our immediate exec team, but right up into ownership groups is absolutely vital. They take it really seriously in terms of what's being said and what that strategic view is, and it can have dramatic impact on the business. So communication and strategy without a doubt.
So what challenges do you see, bearing that in mind, that communication, what challenges do you see in the current revenue management function? Is there anything that you can see that works? Can we continue doing the same things, or do we need to change some areas of that communication style?
It's a good question, Ali. I've always felt that there is a long-standing view that typically revenue management teams control the business. And that's through a process of managing software or systems, and it's often seen as a hurdle approach towards doing business. And that perception is changing, and as revenue management begins to get more involved in long-term planning, in terms of business modeling, in terms of being able to be at the center of the process of driving a business forward, that whole view is beginning to change quite radically. Now that's really important, I think, in terms of where the revenue management team is positioned. I've historically seen three parts to a commercial triangle, which is that there's a sales, there's a marketing, and there's a revenue management function. But I do believe that revenue management can take the center ground in that process and can stimulate both sides in terms of sales and marketing to transition into a role of demand management.
Okay, so movement of the revenue function from isolation into being far more integrated into that commercial function.
Yes.
With that in mind, where do you see that we're going to get our future revenue managers from? I mean, typically, a typical transition would be from reservations manager through to revenue manager. Does that work, or should we be looking elsewhere? What kind of skills are required for the new and upcoming revenue managers?
So in answer to your question, yes, it does work. We've got some young stars in our team who've come through that route, and they're getting tremendous development at the moment, and they're being fast-tracked into fairly senior positions because they have a latent talent and capability. But separately, I think we also should look inside and outside of the industry. So to me, revenue management exists in many different industries, not just the hotel sector. It just has a different name. But the process and the principle by which they operate their business and they manage their pricing is very similar. So there is a wealth of revenue management talent and capability. We just have to find it.
Do you think we're building people in the right way? Do you think we're investing enough in that in terms of new people?
Generally, no. And I think that what tends to happen is we get people in a job, and then they do the job, and then we do the after-thinking afterwards in terms of, okay, what do they need? And for me, it's really important that we actually push that process much further forward, that we have a sustained and a carefully crafted development plan, that's communicated right up front with everybody so they understand the journey they're about to go through, and then we invest in them. So we spend time with them, we coach them, we develop them, and we make sure that they take something out of it. There's a view in our business that everybody has equity within them, and it's our job and responsibility to grow the level of equity within the individuals to make them more valuable in the future.
And in terms of moving forward and that level of investment, how do you think the industry needs to change to build the leaders of tomorrow? So what actually needs to change to actually make that happen?
I think for me, time is really important. So this is a business that runs very fast and is very results driven. And sometimes we don't necessarily invest the right time in people or processes in order to make them or help them be successful. So time is really important. The ability to then use that time wisely and to be able to give the individuals within the team the skill sets and to harness their natural kind of inclination towards doing the right thing and driving the business positively, for me, that's really important. So often we get into a position where we go, come on, where's the next result? Come on, what's happening, what's happening, what's happening? If we just step back and think and actually begin to think, okay, well, what exactly is it that they need? How do we build the time to give them the freedom to do that? That unlocks so much potential.
Yeah, I think the short-term gains that we look for sometimes are sort of, we lose that in terms of the long-term gain that we want to get. Yeah. So what's your single biggest learning from revenue management, the single biggest thing that you've learned?
I could probably sum it up in one word, it's precision.
Okay.
And being in that commercial role, I describe sales as being ideas driven and enthusiastic, marketing are creative and innovative, but revenue management brings precision to the overall commercial performance. It's about using a laser-like focus on what the business needs and how the business needs it, and then providing a framework where we can apply the right measurement. That precision is the bit that makes it work for me, and that's the bit that I think we constantly learn from. And
so, biggest learning, so in terms of your biggest learning, any really horrible experiences you've had, what's your worst experience of revenue management?
It's downturns. Yeah. The market is cyclical, as we know. When we go into a downturn, everybody has to think differently, behave differently, and do things differently as well, because competition is more aggressive, it's more cutthroat, there's often a race to the bottom in terms of pricing. So for me, it's very challenging when downturns arrive. It's the ability to do the right thing and to transition a business carefully through a downturn, but it can be tough. It can be really tough, and it means that everybody's under a lot of pressure. It means that the business is under pressure, and it means that decisions tend to be compromised in the shorter term in order to get through downturn.
Mm-hmm. And do you see the current market positioning, particularly with the level of share you have in the London market and external influences such as Brexit, do you see that you're already preparing for a slight or a downturn particularly? Is that kind of like your mantra at the moment?
My mantra is to be prepared for everything, because there's also opportunity in the market as well. Yeah. So it's be prepared to take advantage of that. There are some pressures within the industry at the moment, and we don't know to what extent that will manifest itself over the future. I am generally by nature fairly optimistic in terms of how we can take our industry forward, and how we can actually grow the people within our industry in order to do a great job for us and for them. But generally, I think that over the next 18 months, it's going to be interesting. There will be challenges along the way, but there'll be upsides and downsides as well.
Okay, hopefully more upsides than downs.
I hope so.
So, finally, top 3 pieces of advice for our audience today, something for them to take away.
The one that really springs to mind for me, and then there are 2 that cascade off that, is data, and it's the quality of data. And wherever I've ever been, there has been varying qualities of the data that the revenue management team work with. And I think it's really important to invest the right amount of time into making sure that the data is absolutely accurate. Mm-hmm. Sometimes data tables drawn from different sources come up with different information and different viewpoints. But it's a relentless drive to get the accuracy of the data right that, for me, forms the foundation of successful revenue management. From that very highly accurate data, so when we know where every 50p is and how that's been spent and applied and how that comes down into net RevPAR, when we know that, that then creates influence. So it's how do we use that data to influence the business in terms of the decisions that we make and the investments that we make. That data can really be the dividing line between, do we spend 20, 30, 40 million here, or do we spend it somewhere else? Mm-hmm. So the influence is critical. And then the last thing I think is to take a long-term view as well as a short-term view. So for me, the secret to revenue management success is all about having a threefold radar. So it's what's happening now, it's what's happening close, and it's what's happening in the distance. And it's to be sure that we don't neglect what's happening in the distance so that we're prepared and ready for it when it arrives.
Thank you very much. That was David Taylor, GLH Hotels. Please.